I'm Lois Beres, and I'm at KZGN-TV. This is Ridgecrest Talk. Welcome. This show is planned to highlight the remarkable history and the fantastic people and activities that we have here in our valley. Over a period of time, we're going to show you the history, some of the great people who live here, why they came here, what they're doing, and what they plan to do, and some of the activities in which they're involved. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of the wonderful people that we have around us, your neighbors, if you will. Today I have with me Vivian. Okay, here we stop. I am not very good at foreign names, so Vivian, could you tell me your whole name?
Vivian Cheperkoff Hayes.
Cheperkoff. Okay, see why I didn't want to do that, folks? Can I call you Vivian?
Yes.
Okay,
thank you.
all right. Vivian's an educated lady. She has 3 or 4 degrees. She has a bachelor's and a couple of master's degrees. She's an award-winning artist and author. Welcome. Glad to have you at Ridgecrest Talk. I need to know a little bit about how you came to Ridgecrest, why, and maybe even when. Can you tell me a little bit?
Well, I'm a native Californian, and I've lived in different parts of California. So we were in San Diego when my son-in-law was stationed up here in Ridgecrest, and my mother happened to be a widow at the time, and she was living with me. So the family followed the grandkids up here. We came in December of 1994. And I've been here 20 years, and so my mother and I lived up here for a brief time, and then when she passed away, my son-in-law and my daughter were no longer living on the base. They got a home.
Everybody moved out about that time.
They got their own home, which they still have, and I lived with them for a while, and then I got my home over in Ridgecrest Heights. So
wonderful.
I've been there 20 years, and I love Ridgecrest. I know people maybe are bored with Ridgecrest or whatever, but my motto for Ridgecrest is the friendly town. And everybody is really friendly to me. I mean, they all know me at the bank, the stores, and everything.
I love that. Whenever you go somebody, it's, hey, how are you? And you know them.
Very friendly here in
I love that part.
And of course, having my own home makes it very nice to be here.
So you're glad that you're here then?
I am glad
That's
I'm here,
really good. And you are working some,
yes,
right?
I work
in addition to your art.
For CRView Home Care, helping to care for some of their elderly clients.
I see. Okay. And I understand that you have several projects going. Like I said, she's an author and an artist. And some of your projects are art. The main one you're working on right now, I understand, is a book. Is that correct?
Yeah. My father was a Russian-born San Francisco artist, Michael Cheperkoff, and I am writing a book about him called Secrets Revealed, Michael Cheperkoff, the artist, the man, his life, his art. And also, though, well, before this, I was a practicing artist here in the community, and then my house got filled up with art, and I just sort of stopped.
Wow.
And then I was doing cartoons. So the Gloria Longo's Inland Adventure, I have my cartoon in there every month.
You still do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's in there. And then I am going to be trying to publish those cartoons as a book called Cartoons for the Curious Mind.
Oh, I like that. What type of cartooning? Is it political or?
Well, no, it's sort of whatever comes to my mind. So there's quite a variety, all sorts of things.
Oh, okay.
And there's, you know, maybe a little bit of politics in there, but you know, for a very brief time, I did a few political cartoons for the Daily Independent not too long ago, but I stopped doing that. And then, so.
But right now, your love or your dream is to get this book done.
This is a perspective cover for this book, and it shows some of my father's art.
Tell us a little bit about your father. He was...
Okay, he was born in Russia November 12th, 1899. So
wow.
Whenever some activity involves him, I always figure he's the same age as that year. So he grew up in Russia under the Tsars, and in he was born in what they call Lugansk, Ukraine, which is now Luhansk, Ukraine. And that's the area that Putin
where
and
they're
the
fighting
Russians,
right now?
They're fighting right now over that
Oh, for
area.
heaven's sake.
And, you know, people call Putin a bully. Well, all the Russian leaders were bullies. They you know, we have the czars, we have Stalin, we have Catherine the Great, and, you know, they all, when I never knew anything about Russian history, and so from the Ridgecrest Public Library, I got books on Russian history.
To study so that you'd have background for your book.
Right, to research this book. I've been working on it for a year.
Okay.
And so they, you know, all these people were conquering each other, you know, like the last 1,000 years, the Mongols, and then they went to war with Japan in 1904. They had a revolution in 1905. Then the famous revolution is the 1917 revolution.
And your father got caught up in that, right?
Yeah, the government actually picked him to study medicine.
Oh, really?
In 1913 during World War I, and he was going to go to college in Siberia. But what happened was that Revolutionary War of 1917, which is the famous one, took over, and he ended up on the losing side in the White Army, and the Red Army, which was the Bolsheviks, was the winning side. So at that time, he and the other losing people had to literally run for their lives across the Amur River to Manchuria while they're being shot at. Crossed the ice, they got over to Manchuria, which was a neutral territory, and worked their way to Harbin, Manchuria, and eventually there was like 100,000 Russians from the losing side in Harbin. Well, then China took over Manchuria and broke diplomatic relations with Russia.
Oh, wow.
And the Russians had to leave in 1923. So he was 23 years old, and he and another fellow, Boris Sununian, led 57 Russian students.
Okay, I'm going to have you hold that thought because we need to go to a break. We'll get back with your father and the Russian students in just a bit.
All right, thank you very much.
Lois and Vivian back again, and we got your father all the way to China, I believe.
Right.
And what did he do there?
He ran a hospital. He was working like a doctor.
A doctor. Okay.
Yeah, at the hospital. And then when China cut off diplomatic relations with Russia, 100,000 Russians had to leave what was no longer Manchuria, but China.
Okay.
And he somehow they organized visas and permission to leave. It's got, you know, to study as students abroad. So now this is my father, and you notice he's bald. And one of the stories that he always told in the newspapers written about him was that his head and neck froze, and he lost his hair at the age of 19.
For heaven's sake.
And so there's something at the end of the book that I lost my hair at the age of 16, and so I have a discussion about the genetics versus.
I was going to ask you, don't think maybe it was just genetic and not a.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, so as part of the book at the end, I have a little discussion about genetics and acquired characteristics too.
Interesting.
So I do have that. But
so he must have had some leadership skills because he organized this group to leave, correct?
And, you know, I mean, that's what's amazing. I think of myself at the age of 23, and here's this guy at the age of 23.
Right.
And then on his visa, when he leaves, it turned, you know, they gave his height and weight and all that, and he's only 5'6".
So he's a small guy.
We think of, you know, these 6-footers as being the big leaders, and here he was the leader.
Oh.
And when he came across, he's 23, he met this girl Maria that was 23, and we have letters in Russian from her, but I haven't translated them yet. I'm trying to get somebody to translate them.
You may want to be careful, maybe something you don't want to know.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I was telling Lois earlier, there's a family story that there was a child born before my mother, and I'm trying to find out if Maria is the mom,
figure this out.
but I haven't found that out yet. So anyway, I do.
But he got away from the war.
Yeah.
And
he
got to the United States?
Well, yeah, he went to Japan, and he was on the ship Rakuyo Maru, which was a passenger ship at the time and a freighter, and it went stopped, I guess, for refueling in Hawaii, and then went to San Francisco with these passengers. There was like 57 in his group that were to be students.
Oh.
And so most of them settled in San Francisco. He went to Northern California for a short time and worked for a ceramic company because he switched from being medical to being an artist, of all things.
Oh my gosh.
And he was
Wait, that's a swap.
Yeah, he was doing architectural modeling and design. And these Russians, I guess they put on circuses and stuff. That was like an entertainment at the time.
Okay.
You know, no television, nothing like that. And so he ends up being a sculptor. And then he came back down to San Francisco. That's where he lived all his life, was San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
So
all of his life in the United States was in San Francisco.
Well, he went to UC Berkeley.
Oh, okay.
He went, you know, he got his student visa. He entered UC Berkeley and went through 4 years of college there and graduated.
And was a major?
Art.
Oh,
and
okay.
he graduated with highest honors. And this is a painting, a self-portrait that he did of himself. You know.
Oh, that's very interesting. Does he have a little hair on there?
No,
yeah,
no, just on the side.
Okay.
You know, and it's an oil painting. He met my mother in his junior year at college, and they were artists. Both of them were artists, and so they had to be artists. So we didn't call them Mom and Dad. We called them Mike and Ofa.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh. Now, Ofa's not your run-of-the-mill American name. Is she an immigrant?
No, but my grandmother wanted her kids to all have short names.
Okay.
So, but her husband was Wilbur, so the first one was Wilbur, but then there was Ofa, Ina, and Kirk. So
okay.
They all had short names.
They just picked the name. It wasn't like an immigrant name or anything.
No,
okay.
no. They were.
I was just curious when I saw that.
American family.
Yeah.
I do want to show this picture of an icon.
Interesting.
My father eventually, later on, married a lady named Virginia, and I have 4 half-sisters through that marriage.
Okay.
So when Virginia died, the reason why I started writing the book was Virginia had kept quite a bit of his art, a lot of his letters. There was a trunk, and he saved all the letters that my mother wrote to him when she was away from him. So I have all this stuff to turn into a book about her. And so her book is Letters to a Lover.
So you're going to write one for her and one for him?
One for him, yeah. And then the ironic thing about this icon, I don't know if you can see it, but this is about the size. It's small. And so the traditional, they were Russian Orthodox.
Okay.
And the traditional icon that people had in their home was painted with paint on wood. And a person they would have like a corner set up as a little altar or whatever we call it.
I gotcha.
And the public library here in Ridgecrest has a book called Russian Icons by Vladimir, what is his name? Ivanov, I believe. And you can get that from our library and see these icons. Well, this icon, my sisters fought over this icon when their mother died. And my theory in the book is that it wasn't a family icon, that it was a souvenir that the Chinese made to sell to the Russians. They had 100,000 customers leaving Harbin. This is molded metal.
Wow.
So it can be manufactured. It's not, and it might have been hand painted after the mold, but anyway, that's my theory.
We're going to have to skip a little bit so we can kind of get closer to the end because we're almost to run out of time.
Oh, okay.
So if you've got some real important stuff you want to talk about say the climax of the book or something like that, you might want to bring that out.
All right, yeah. Can we still talk, or are we on a commercial?
Oh no, we can talk.
Oh, okay, well then let me just skip.
This lady's prepared, folks.
I have chapters about his different work, but this is my mother in 1933.
Okay.
This is my mother in 1936, and you can see how haggard she looks.
She aged.
Yeah, well, what happened was the Depression came in 1929, but it didn't hit the artist right away. It was like the mid-1930s. This is him in 1936, and on the back it says, "We are down but not out."
Oh, that's interesting.
And so,
okay, what we're going to have to do now is, we didn't get through near all this. Maybe we'll have to do this again. But if somebody would like to reserve a copy or get interesting information from you about the book, do you have an email that you'd like to give it?
Vivian Hayes, all in small letters,
Big
all
card?
run together, 154@yahoo.com. I
Okay.
also have a P.O. Box 551.
But I got to thank you, Vivian, for sharing this story with us, because we're about to run out of time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We're back. I got the wrong call in my brain. I'm sorry. We've got a couple minutes left, and Vivian's going to share with you a little bit more about her father and some of his sculptures at the World's Fair.
Well,
and which World's Fair was
there was
that?
a 1939 International Exposition on Treasure Island in San Francisco, and this is one of the sculptures that he made there. You can see there's a tree in the background. It's very large.
Tall.
Very
Yeah.
large. There was 5 sculptures. This one shows up pretty well. The skier, and there's
He's
trees
on
in
that
the
other one too,
background.
right? Yeah.
And so what he did was he started making toys for us kids, and this is how tiny they are. And I've got the tin snips here. This is a little squirrel, and this is a little elephant. And so literally out of tin cans that they had for food, he would use these snips and cut the flat metal and bend it around into being
Oh, for
a
heaven's
sculpture.
sake.
And
Is that any of your skills?
yeah,
you
I do.
that?
I call it spatial visualization, which is a way of seeing something flat and being able to picture it in 3 dimensions. This owl
Did you
is
want to try to
actually-
get this, Fritz?
This owl is actually one flat piece of metal, all bent around to be
Can you turn it around
three-dimensional.
and hold it up? And Fritz,
Yeah.
no, the other way. Isn't that
This
there?
is the with the beak and the eyes. It's all from one piece of metal bent around
Wow.
into a 3-dimensional object. The bear is a little
Shouldn't hold.
simpler, and this is a flat piece of metal, but
Okay.
it's flatter. There's less curvature.
Hold
but
it. Okay, you can go ahead and hold those up if you want to for a bit, and maybe somebody can take a look at them a little bit better.
Right, but I mean,
Okay.
what's amazing is they started off as one flat
One
piece of
piece.
metal, and then they're curved around.
Now, he did this.
He did this,
Okay.
yeah, and so
Okay.
he ended up being called the tin can sculptor.
Oh, really?
And so he actually had a little bit of fame in San Francisco in the late 30s, and people knew him for his sculpture, his paintings. There was one painting I have to just mention, if I can dig it out, where he caused a scandal.
Uh-oh.
And it wouldn't cause a scandal today at all. It's showing graft among the police and the politicians.
Oh, for
In
heaven's
San
sake.
Francisco. And it's like, you know, we see this stuff on TV so much nowadays, we wouldn't blink an eye over this. But there was somebody was investigating the politicians in San Francisco in 1936, and he painted this painting, and they put it in a museum show in 37, and the city officials wanted it removed.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Because they didn't like
Too much criticism of the politicians.
Yeah, right.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
And so there were articles about that. So in order to research this book, I got newspaper articles from the San Francisco Public Library Historical Section.
Okay.
He died when I was 19. I
Oh,
knew
okay.
nothing about him other than being the visiting father. So
Did you know him during the World's Fair time?
I was 4 years old then.
So you didn't really
So
know.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I
And
got
so actually, all this stuff that I've written in the book, I've researched over the past year.
I see.
And it's going to be roughly around $24 for the book. It's going to be an 8.5 by 11, 250 page.
Oh, a nice sized
with,
book.
Yeah, with probably, you know, a couple of hundred illustrations of his
Oh,
work.
wonderful.
And it's published by Dorrance, but it's going to be on Amazon, you know, other publishers
Excellent.
too. So,
okay.
and then these other books, okay, we have the cartoons, we have my mother's book.
And now you haven't written your mother's book yet.
No,
have
I'm
you?
working on that.
Oh,
And then
okay.
I had a long time ago in 1969, Sterling Publishing Company published my book, Batik is a Hobby, and I'm getting the copyright back, and I'm going to republish that.
Oh.
And so that will be coming out.
Tell me what batik is.
Batik is drawing a design with wax on cloth and dyeing it, and then you melt the wax out, and it leaves like the light line where the wax
Is it
was.
like
Doesn't
the
dye.
tie-dye sort of thing? Or
Similar idea, that you're blocking the dye from.
And this is the
certain things.
art that you did personally.
This was, yeah,
Yeah,
and
you
I
wrote a book about that.
And so that's going to come out. And then the last book is Easy Exercises, which I hate to do any exercise. And Sheena Temple of, gosh, what is it? High Desert Fitness over on Inyokern is teaching a silver sneakers class at
heard
the
about
hospital.
that.
So
Yeah.
I went to that and I said, can I photograph these exercises and put them in a book? So, you know, I've done some photography of her exercises, but we haven't got it out in a book form yet. But all of that, it's like juggling too many balls. I can't.
And you're
get it
doing
all
this
done.
all at once. That just amazes me. I can't get one thing done at a time, much less 2 or 3 books and whatever. If you wrap up your dad's book, how are you going to close it? What's going to be the culmination?
I go through his whole life. He died at the age of 55. His wife actually had a postpartum psychosis and ended up in Napa State Hospital when psychiatry
That's
was
Northern California, right?
Yeah, very barbaric. And the kids went in foster homes, and it was a terrible, terrible experience. And they were still in the foster system when he died. And I think the stress killed him. And he wrote me a letter, which I use at the conclusion of the book, where he sort of regretted not going on with his art and choosing to support these kids with the sheet metal work. And, you know, but he chose his children.
Well, that's a good thing, I think, but it probably hurt his heart that he didn't get to continue with his art.
Right.
So it's amazing. Do you have memories of him even as a small child?
Oh yeah, because he lived in San Francisco. We lived in Berkeley after my mother divorced him, and he would come and visit.
Okay.
And he took us over to San Francisco when we were old enough, and went to the zoo.
Really?
We went to the art museums over there, and you know, so I have a lot of good memories of stuff that.
Oh,
you know,
that's
he taught
great.
me.
And you can put that sort of at the end of your book too.
That's
like,
part of it. Yeah,
you
I
know.
have a chapter on him as a father. you
Yeah,
know.
because Dad still loved
Oh,
me.
and he took us fishing. He loved fishing.
Really? And you did too? You like to
Well,
go
yeah,
fishing?
I like fishing. And my sister, Gayla, I have to mention her, she calls it Gayla Shapurkoff, but she actually has written a couple of books. She's on the internet, and she was a commercial fisher person for a while.
Oh, really?
And then she's no longer doing that, but
Okay.
she's retired. But she did do that, and you know, he took us all fishing.
Oh,
We
that's
loved
great.
that.
So you did fishing and the zoo and all the museums and everything. So you have a lot of good memories of your dad.
Yeah,
Do you want to repeat your email address?
All right, Vivian Hayes 154 at yahoo.com.
Okay.
Or P.O. Box 551, Ridgecrest, California, 93556.
I thank you for sharing your story with us, and thank you guys for watching Ridgecrest Talk. I'll get smoother next time. Hope you'll come back.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Okay.